Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. And thank you for joining me tonight. Yeah, on the evening of the Queen's Queen Jubilee. I've been taking in the concerts of the Big Bashment, which is taking place down the North Road by the mall. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight on Talk and Sip. First of all, let me just show you what I'm drinking. I made a concoction of some juices. I think that's inside of it, it has mango, orange, uh, grape, pineapple, uh, raspberry, blueberry. You know, it's a special Jubilee special. Mm. Jubilee special this evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Jubilee special. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight uh, on Talk and Sip, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, my topic tonight is the Queen. I don't know why it says the Queen. I need to change that. Something is fundamentally wrong with my right up there. I can't have the Queen. It's the Queen. The Queen. Respect is due. Let me just put that there. The Queen. The Queen. Well, actually taken in the concert a while ago, and it's beautiful and it's smashing. But I want to have a conversation tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And there's a topic there: the Queen, Jubilee, and Reparations, the final legacy. Because while the concert has been going on, people have been saying, "Hey, simpler, we should have the Queen should leave a legacy saying reparations now." And get Charles and William to bring the whole thing into fruition. What can I say? But I want to give respect at the same time to the Queen. Queen Elizabeth too. She serves her time. She 70 years on the throne, which is a mammoth and a marathon task. What can I say? You talk about the Commonwealth, which is also crucial. It's interesting. All of this is culminating at this time when I think in this month, if I'm not mistaken, is it this month? They're going to have the elections for the new Commonwealth Secretary General. It could either be Baroness Scotland retaining her position as incumbent, or it could be Amina Johnson, the present Minister of Foreign Affairs. So we're going through this very interesting and crucial time, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting and crucial time where there's a shift. But I must say that going back to the whole COVID period, where we're all social distancing and we had to keep our space, there's never been a party like this since. I believe the last time any major celebration was out there was maybe Brexit, you know. And I think I was actually at um, Westminster that night, actually. And I think that was the biggest last time there was a major lockdown in 2020. So this has been the biggest one, massive conference on the mall, massive concert on the mall. And I did a little live on it earlier, just straight from my television, because somehow I'm finding it very difficult to come to stream. But I'm not going to maybe stay long tonight because of the fact that I want to catch more of the concert. But I want to have a discussion, and I want to invite persons to come on tonight as well. But for tonight, I will be having Uncle Joe Aldred, Bishop Joe Aldred, is going to come on tonight. Hopefully, other members of the team coming on tonight to maybe have some discussions of that. And also, if you want to come on, they can come on as well. I have the link up there where you can join us. Those on Instagram, you will not be able to see everyone. If you go on to YouTube, Silver TV, you'll be able to see the full shebang. Or if you go on to Facebook, you'll be able to see the full shebang as well. But without further ado, I'm going to see if I can bring Uncle Joe and we can have a discussion and take it from there. Here we go. Hey, Sir Joe.
Hey, here we are.
We all got it right, yeah?
Yeah, good to be with you.
Good, good, good. Thank you, sir. Well, good evening to you, and from all the way from Birmingham,
Well, just outside.
just outside Birmingham. Listen, have you been enjoying the concert? I don't know if you've been watching the concert.
I've been doing a spot of gardening, um, and earlier in the day, uh, granddadding
Yes, yes, yes.
with my four grandchildren. It's my monthly meet up with them for Chinwagon to eat some stuff, and then so that was this morning, and then tonight it has been mostly gardening. But I've been coming in and out, so I've spotted a bit of the TV. And then, of course, being a keen cricket fan, I've been watching the West Indies. Well, I've not been watching, but following the West Indies today against the Netherlands. And also because England is my second team, following their progress against New Zealand as well. So there's been more than the Jubilee party going on for me.
Okay, so therefore, at the same time, You're still capitalizing on the moment, though.
Well, as you know, I'm a retired gentleman now, so I don't actually need. Today is Saturday, but I didn't need the Queen to give me two bank holidays, Thursday, Friday. I'm already on a holiday, and listen, this is indeed an interesting moment.
Yes,
I'm not a great monarchist.
yes,
I think I'm one of the few people around who was asked to be a DL, deputy lieutenant, and said no. And I would say the same if I was ever offered an honor with empire attached to it. I have some serious challenges around what not just the monarchy, but the West has done
yes,
to my people historically, feelings that still affect us more than feelings, actions which still affect how we are today. So I have no antipathy towards the Queen personally. I went to one of the garden parties to which I was invited some time ago, and I would go again if I were invited and the opportunity availed. I have to tell you, watching the service in St. Paul's yesterday, having been involved with ecumenical gatherings like that for the last 25, nearly 30 years, I wished I were there, just watching it. It's so grandiose that I really did wish I were there. And if I had been invited and if I were close, I could go, I think I would have gone. So I've got mixed feelings about this moment that we're in. Mixed feelings based on my own history and yours too, and that of all African and Caribbean people living in this country and the places. But I have to take my hat off to the Queen for two things. One,
yes,
to have reigned for 70 years in the way that the Queen has, with dignity and with a sense of sure-footedness, in the midst of all that's been going on. That's one thing. Hats off to Her Majesty. But secondly, the way she has worn her Christian faith as a sort of practical badge of not honor but reality. That for her Jesus is an example, and has never, in the midst of 70 years of declining faith practice in this country, certainly religious practice, has constantly kept that in front of everything she says. That has been quite remarkable too. But if you live with such riches, such wealth, sit on top of such a financial gold mine, it's a challenge, but I think it's a cushioned challenge that the royal family and the Queen particularly have had to contend with. So as I said, I'm a Christian. I understand that the Bible is full of references to God as king. And, that sense of empire is a very biblical thing, and a very truthfully, it's a historical thing. I go back in my mind to, Babylon and the Jews, some of them anyway, taken captive to Babylon, followed by the Persian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, and later on come the British Empire. Russians had an empire, so empires all around the world. So I'm not innocent of knowledge that that's how the world is.
Yes.
But it has affected me and the people from which I come in a pretty significant way. And so whilst I want to show honor and I want to show sense of dignity toward what I see, I'm also I'm not head over heels, put it that way.
I must say that your sentiment is one which is sort of resonating throughout the community. When I say the community, Jamaican, the black community, in a sense, there's a level of wanting to show that level of respect, but at the same time, there's a question sign that she should really go, if anything, whenever she goes, leaving a more fundamental legacy by going straight at it by saying apologies, sorry, and the motion of reparation to kick in. Something to show some level of empathy at the same time, because when one watched the big celebration, which is rightly going on at the mall, you would think that's it. Wow, there's nothing more. But there's this underbelly,
Yeah.
which is bubbling at the same time.
Yeah. Well, what these moments tend to do is to suck you in. It pulls you in. It's big. It's loud. People want to be part of it. So I'm just saying. I've said to you that watching the service at St. Paul's, if I had been at work, maybe an invitation might have come to me. I might have gone. And it's easy to get sucked in. Now, getting sucked in means that you become part of what's going on. And it's an inconvenient truth to tell, to talk about reparations at a time like this. It feels like you one is being too
up in the face.
Jamaica would call it crumungin, right?
Yeah.
Or the proper English word is curmudgeon. You'd be seen to be somewhat curmudgeon. And I wouldn't want to rain on nobody's party, right? So I wouldn't myself right now be talking about reparations so loudly, particularly because right now is a moment to mark a very honorable, distinguished 70 years of reign. But at the same time, I can't afford, as I said, to get head over heels about this moment, because whilst it represents longevity and there's honor attached to that, and the Queen has acted with great dignity, the fact that the fact that you and I are both here in England, actually, and not in Africa or the Caribbean, is testament to the history from which we come, a history that has seen Europe and the West benefit at the expense of our people, whether on the mainland of Africa or in the Caribbean, whether as people of empire, the colonies, or just the racist way in which the West has set itself in correlation to Africa and Black people generally. So the reason what we're seeing can be afforded is partly the reason why we're poor back in Africa, Asia too, and the Caribbean. So as I said, whilst I'm not going out to
rain on the thunder.
Yeah, I don't want to rain on the parade, but I'm saying I think we should be measured in our response, and we should recognize that the gains that we are seeing is largely at the expense of people that come from our heritage. Now, what I'm not saying though is that I expect the Queen to make some mighty gesture of reparation. I would not hold my breath for that. It hasn't happened in 70 years that she sat on the throne. I'm not quite sure why we would imagine that is going to happen in whatever length of time she has left on the throne, in which she's handing over to Charles and her grandson. I think what needs to happen is somewhat like what we've seen Barbados do, and what Jamaica is contemplating doing, which is to say, listen, the time for colonial outposts, literally, metaphorically, is up. And we're not actually asking you, Your Majesty, to give us a pass. We are taking that pass. We are taking our destiny into our own hands. We are the ones who must make the move towards true independence, true exercise of our own agency. I was saddened recently, I think it was today or yesterday, to hear broadcast that because of the war in Ukraine,
Yes.
Africa is likely to fare very, very badly, because 40% of Africa's grain come from Ukraine and Russia. And I'm thinking, this massive continent of Africa, the expanse of islands in the ocean in the Caribbean, we need to stop looking to Europe for our destiny and our progress. And we need to look at how we are going to become self-sufficient.
There wasn't Zimbabwe the breadbasket of Africa?
It was the breadbasket of Africa when it was run by white people.
Mm.
You know, if we are to be totally blunt about it, when the whites ran Zimbabwe, it was the breadbasket of America. Once Mr. Mugabe had done his best, and I admire him as a liberation fighter. I even admire him for the first bit of presidency that he did. But in the end, the thing went pear-shaped. Partly also because of the way in which Europe undermined him as well. But nevertheless, once the farming had got out of the hands of the white farmers and had got into the hands of black farmers, what we've seen is a demolition, if you like, of that farming industry. So it's now in black hands, but ain't the breadbasket anymore. So, but what that proved is that Africa can be self-sufficient. That's what it proves. And we you know, Bob Marley says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Not just Bob Marley, of course.
Marcus Garvey.
But Marcus Garvey. I think we have a real challenge as Black people to stop filling our eyes with either call for the end of racism or calls for reparation, somehow believing against all the evidence of the last 500 years that somehow those who have been your oppressors are somehow going to be your liberators.
Your savior. Yes.
Your savior. I mean, all the bright Black sociologists and radicals have said that is a vain hope. It's a pipe dream. And so, of course, nobody wants to live in a racist system. But racism is where we are, right? It's in the world. If we're simply fighting to end racism, wouldn't we rather build something than fight against something? I want to see us shift our focus from still believing that our liberation, our freedom is dependent on white action.
So stick a pin right there, Uncle Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight on Talking Stick. And Uncle Joe, I'm just going to ask you what you're drinking, sir. If you're drinking anything tonight.
I rushed to the screen. I didn't bring a drink with me, so I'll have a proverbial something.
As Reverend Gary Graham, he would say to me, Silver, and I'm drinking the Holy Spirit.
Well,
ladies and gentlemen,
if you tell him from me that if he can liquidize God and drink God, then he's a better man than I.
Yeah. But ladies and gentlemen, those on Instagram, I want to thank you for joining, and those on Facebook, thank you for joining. I'm with Bishop Joe Aldred, and the topic today we're looking at is the Queen Jubilee and Reparations, the final legacy. And we're sort of digging a bit deeper than just the top end while the Queen is celebrating her Jubilee, and not rain on her thunder at the same time, but we're looking out really at ourselves. And so remember to like and share and let persons know as well. And if you want to join the conversation, there's a link there you can join. Sergio, that key point you mentioned right there is very profound. And it is something that I've always held on to as well. I'm this type of person that always say, I'm not going to fight the man who is doing something that he believes is right for him. I mean to say, I'm not going to rain thunder on someone seeking reparation, but I'm not going to be the one that is going to be holding out, hoping that reparation is going to be my savior and going to help me. When I recognize from the past and history, not just from when slavery started, but that we are self-sufficient, very reliant people, and we can actually do it. So therefore, my thing is that whether it comes or not, are we gonna be are we gonna be laid back and help ourselves, or are we gonna push beyond that? That's my sort of thinking.
There is something even worse than that. Yeah. What you hold up there as dichotomy, even worse than that, and it is this. You have to go back to Malcolm X and his writings and speeches, but he mischievously has been, when he was alive, pointing us to the example of the plantation. Yes. The plantation where there is the bulk of the slaves, the enslaved, in the fields. He called them, we're using the N word, the field N, right? And then he talked about those who didn't work in the fields, but work in the slave master's house. Yes. And usually either live in the house or had a little thing attached to the slave master's house, that where they would live. Parts of Jamaica now, as I'm sure you know better than me, some of the houses where people are wealthy have a little attached thing, cabin, at the side where the house aide lives. Very similar to the slave regime. So what Malcolm X has been pointing out is that the experience of the slaves in the field, up early, sun burned them, some of them die under the whip of the drivers, right? That experience was a very different experience to the experience of those slaves who live either in the master's house or right adjoining to the master's house. And what he's pointing out to us is that we must never lose sight that the experiences are different. Of course, the slave, the enslaved who is living in the master's house, still a slave, and may get the odd box here and there, and even worse than that. But their experience is generally one more of privilege. It's a softer cushion. It's a softer slave life. Still slave, but it's a softer life. Now, what Malcolm X is pointing out is that who's driving? Who do you want to drive the debate about liberation? Because if it is the house slave, let's call them that, then they're in this interesting place where, from their relatively privileged position, right? They can somehow obviate the fact that they are slaves because their lot is nowhere near as bad as their brothers and sisters in the cane fields and the cotton fields, right? So when the people in the cotton fields and the cane fields say, we're going to riot, we're going to burn down the slave master's house, the slaves who live right next door or inside the slave master's house, you're saying, oh, hold on a minute. Oh, hold on a minute. You know, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Let me negotiate with, you know, the master. I'll get you better terms, right? And sometimes they can. So they had this dual role, my point is now from Malcolm X. They had the house slave had this dual role, keeping the slave master assured that the slaves in the field not going to come kill them and burn on them house. And they have also the role of saying to the slaves in the field, under the burning sun, under the whip, dying and so on, listen, I am fighting for better terms with the slave master, right? Don't do anything drastic. Leave it to me. So from their privileged, somewhat privileged position, they're playing this dual role. Now, in this time in which we live, right now, I want to suggest to everybody that actually we are seeing this played out right before our eyes. So there are those, our community leaders, right? If you look at them, if you stand back and look, what you see is privilege, up there with the white establishment, knighthood, lordship, name it, right? Big jobs, money. They are not in a rush to do much more than say to us, of course racism is here. I'm fighting it for you, right? I'm fighting it. Every day I wake up, I'm fighting it, right? That's what they're telling us, the plebs out there in, under the scorching sun. I'm fighting it for you. You just leave it to us. We're fighting. But the establishment knows and is assured that these are a safe pair of hands.
They won't rock the boat.
No, sir. Or even if they rock the boat, you still know that at the end of the day, they ain't gonna sink the boat because they have a front row seat in that boat up on the deck and a good view, right? Yeah, yes. So that to me is worse because right now, what we have are people with vested interest in keeping things pretty much as they are. They benefit from it. And I would put almost the whole of the race industry into that category of people who benefit from the system and actually promising us that, better is going to come. Of course, we know it's still here. Yes, it's racism, because of course they need that as well. So it's this dual role of assuring the establishment, we're a part of you, we're never going to sink your boat. But assuring people who are outside trying to swim, say, don't worry, I'm fighting for a better life for you. That to me is worse than the scenario that you were positing a while ago.
So what I'm picking up on what you're saying is that you got persons there in the community who are supposed to be our activists, our cheerleaders, our leaders, who actually benefit in the status quo, making it look as if things are happening for change. But they benefit from it, and it is similar to the house slave.
Yes. It's a harsh reality, but that is where it existed under slavery, plantation slavery, and if you look carefully now, you see the same thing happening in front of us. And I'm saying, actually, what needs to, when people want to speak for you, I say, always be careful.
Yes.
Anybody want to speak for you, right? Rather than with you.
Yes.
People who want to act for you rather than act with you. They are stealing your agency from under your nose, right? On the basis that it's almost a chauvinistic thing. It's almost like they're saying, I have found out how to work the system, but you are not capable of doing it, so I have to do it for you.
can I put this scenario to you? And you mentioned about the Commonwealth and the keeping the, you get the OBE, you get the MBE. These are like relics of the past, which is there to keep people in line. But when you think about the Commonwealth, I see the Commonwealth, this is me, I don't care. I see the Commonwealth as a replica or a sort of scenario to keep that sort of relic of the past in place. Because that is how you have the empire maintaining its mirror status, if I should say. So when I see like Jamaica saying to Prince William, people always say, "Oh, Silver, you're gonna," because they know I have an issue with this. I have an issue whereby the Prime Minister said to William and Kate, "We are going to be moving on, and we're going to be leaving you." And then at the same time, they have the Minister of Foreign Affairs who is running to be the head of the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I just cannot fathom it. Even though many people say, well, the Commonwealth, it doesn't have to be people from, former colonial master. I just can't see through it.
Well, let me give you my take. What I will give the British Crown and government some credit for is that as the countries of the former British Empire sought to become independent, right, they could have sent in the army to say, no, you're not. You like Russia is trying to do with Ukraine, for example. So at least they didn't do that, right? They negotiated, so-called negotiated those transitioning from being, an outpost of Britain, part of the empire, to becoming independent countries. Right. So let me say that, right? They could have sent in the tanks and they could have bombed us and whatever. They at least didn't do that. However, there is no question whatsoever that the Commonwealth is Empire Mark II, right? There's no question. Who funds it? Britain, largely. Right, so Britain is supposedly an equal member of 54 countries. Is an equal my foot. You throw a party, you pay for the party, you invite everybody to come to your house, and everybody's equal? No, not really. So Britain funds this party largely, essentially funds this Commonwealth. So whose gig is it? It's Britain's. Right, and the countries which have become independent. We know about Jamaica. Look at Jamaica. 70 years on since so-called independence. 60. Sorry. You have a small percentage of Jamaicans who are very comfortable, but the masses of Jamaicans have a tough life. Much tougher than the masses here, although we are screaming about high prices and stuff like that. But you can't compare like common life here with, say, a country like Jamaica or India or Pakistan, any of those countries that used to be under the British governance and rulership, right? So in ceding independence, it's a bit like what happened after 300, 400 years of slavery, where in 1834, Britain gave us independence. The slaves, British slaves, were free. Free to do what? Free to go into the hills and make brick out of straw, whilst the slave owners ended up with 20 million pounds. Some people say equivalent of 20 billion pounds today. So of course we got freedom, but freedom with nothing in terms of any kind of recognition of the 500 years of enslavement and colonialism that we had gone through. And so the countries which have become independent in some ways in name only. Some people say, don't we, that when they came to England, they found that the education in Jamaica was better than the British system. But it's not true. What is truth about it is that the Jamaican education system was so modeled on the British system that and took it more seriously, so that the British went on changing, adapting and moving, whereas we stayed with the fundamentals, right? So when people came here, we were doing things that they had stopped doing. But the High Court still rules over the court in Jamaica. And Michael Manley says something very profound. Michael Manley, when I was on sabbatical in Jamaica in 2016, I read up on him quite a bit, spending some time in the University of West Indies Library. And Michael Manley talked about, how he was trying to revolutionize Jamaica, and how every time he tried to do it, America would come down on Jamaica like a ton of bricks. The CIA would flood the country with guns and drugs and what have you. And then if he tried to get close to Cuba, he'd certainly feel the heat, right? And he used a phrase. He said, Jamaica trying to get to the second tier of economic development as an independent country was like trying to get to the second floor of a building on a down escalator. That was it. He's actually written that in one of his books. And that has been the reality for independent countries. The IMF is more than willing to roll out the red carpet for you to lend you more money. Tie the noose tighter around your neck, right? Jamaica at one time was paying 70% of its national income in servicing its national debt. Now, if you had to give up £70 out of every £100 you earn, Silver, and live off the other 30 for you and your wife and your lovely children, you would not be able to cope. How can Jamaica cope? And people are surprised that the crime level is high because there's not enough employment, because there's not enough opportunities. Good people leave the island, they go to Canada, they go to America. Why? Because it's a very shallow economy. And I'm merely saying that we must stop looking as though Britain, the Queen, royalty, is some kind of gift horse that's going to somehow, bequeath to us some salvific quota of money and we're going to be fine. By the way, I'm for reparations. I'm actually for it. I think for what this country and Europe in general have done to our people, they more than owe us. I'm just saying we cannot, as you rightly pointed out a while ago, we cannot somehow make ourselves believe that that's where our future lies. That they're going to give us reparations and then we're going to be all right. We have to find a way of building our kingdom without depending
dependency syndrome there
on the same people who threw us overboard of the ships on the high seas, who ruled over us for how many years at their own interest to build up London, to build up the capitals of Europe. Somehow those who are close to the scene of power are trying to convince us that one day we're going to wake up and racism is going to be gone and then everything will be fine.
Do you see it is something which is also resonating with different countries, i.e. where there's that level of injustice. Michelle Clark, she's in the States. She made a point right here. Black people are the only group in the United States that are designated racially as opposed to geographically or nationally, right? That is the United States there, because right now there is this big debate in America, which you can see right there. Just put it up there. California Reparation Task Force releases interim report detailing harms of slavery and systematic discrimination on African Americans. What's I don't know if you had seen that, but what's your take on that? Because that is something which is spinning in the background there.
Yes. Well, what is the case is that they, and I'm not even sure who I mean by they when I say they, have us chasing our tails like a cat or a dog that just keeps running around, So then you grab the tail and you say, "Oh, I got it," and then you let it go and you run around. And so we seek to be running after from one salvific moment to another salvific moment, and we keep believing somehow that the next time we're going to get to the end of the rainbow. There's no end of no rainbow, right? And Michelle is right, absolutely. It's Michelle who said that we, because of the way we are positioned, right? Historic racism has kind of carved out a niche for us. So we are defined by that quote unquote race. We're black. So we're not African, we're not Nigerian, we're not even Jamaican and Barbadian. We're black. This is your ethnic definition. And so we are chasing justice, right? We're looking for justice. Now, I think the writer Soul in America points out that, all disparities are not the result of racism, but what the system is trying to make us do is see racism everywhere, and therefore the solving of racial discrimination as the answer for all our ills. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. I think what we would do better, and I'm seeing some signs of it now, what we'd be better off doing is forget about, we're all one black race, as it were, which we are. But, become Nigerian, become Ghanaian, become Jamaican, and let's build Jamaica, let's build Ghana, let's build Nigeria. Let it punch its weight in the world, right? And when it punches its weight in the world, for example, if in Africa, let's say Zimbabwe was still the breadbasket of Africa, now that there's war in Europe, we would have grain to be exporting to Europe, right? We'd increase our volume, increase our output. But instead, we are struggling, worried now because we might starve. Right? So I hear the president of Ghana talks a good talk, and I hope that the walk is there too. I don't know. But what he's saying is really where we need to be going. We need to stop looking as though salvation is going to come from the east or from the west. It's going to come from somebody else, not us. And look inwards to our own agency about how we are going to build up Jamaica, build up Barbados, build up Nigeria, build up Ghana, build up, all the countries across Africa and across the Caribbean, and stop this besottedness that we seem to have with depending on the same Europe, which has been crushing us under its feet for the last 500 years.
And Michelle also brought the point again, nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever got their freedom by appealing to the people who are them. Yeah.
But somehow, Michelle and other viewers, somehow we have been convinced that that's what we must do. So I see people, some of my heroes crying on TV. Racism has damaged me, I mean, I think it's pathetic. I really do. I think it's pathetic. This idea that somehow we are going to be liberated by the system. It's not even individuals that I'm worried about, by the same system that has oppressed us, murdered us, taken every disadvantage for the last 500 years. Somehow, some of the things that we chase, this idea that in this country, for example, or in America, the Democrats are on the in England, the Labour Party is on the side of blacks. It's those things that people get us chasing. So, so down with Conservative, up with Labour, they're on our side.
It's all right.
And then when you point out that it's not about the political party, it is a philosophy. It's a European philosophy that the European is superior to the African. It's a philosophy built into the very fact of that society. So it's not about matter whether you're Labour or whether you're Conservative. There ain't nobody but us, right? We must be our own liberators. And there's no other way about it. When I tell people, for example, that when the Windrush ship was about to set sail from Kingston in 1948, that the Labour government that was in power at that time was running around Westminster, proverbially running around, metaphorically, running around Westminster, trying to find out, A, could they divert it from coming to Tilbury in London, right? B, is there any way in which they can somehow, once it sets sails, stop, these 500, some people say it's 1,000, colored people from coming here, messing up, a nice white country? That was not a Conservative government. That was a Labour government. So later on, of course, you get Enoch Powell and you get the rest. But they were speaking out of a context, not because they were Conservatives, yes, but because they've grown up in the British system. That is that way in thinking. And as long as we are preoccupied, the information just put up, as long as we are preoccupied with thinking that our salvation is going to come from some other place other than from us, then we are on a fool's errand. And we are on that fool's errand. But if we would open our eyes, we would see the point I'm making, that those, like the house slaves back then, those who now enjoy close proximity to power, if you look at what they're about telling us that, of course, racism is rampant, right? So, and that's the only way in which you must see yourself in society, through the lens of race. And until we solve that, we can't get anywhere.
And in a way, they are the type of persons that somehow are in bed with the house. They're in bed with the whites, if anything.
Yes.
And,
in more ways than one.
Yeah. And they look over the fence and they say, "Let me help you over." So therefore, they are now somewhat like an extended arm.
Yes.
Which is being used to control.
As the house slaves were. That's how it was. And I'm not talking anybody down. I'm just saying that if you look in Britain at the moment, I don't know America well enough, but I suspect it's the same thing over there. And I'm tempted, but I won't go somewhere where I could naturally go on this conversation. But if you look at the people who are the loudest advocates of the black cause, sometimes you have to wonder if they know any black people at all.
Yes.
Right? They certainly don't live in the black community. Right? But they are the big advocates. What happens? The money is, Black Lives Matter is a classic example of how the money pours in. The money pours in from guilty whites, guilty white businesses, guilty white business people, guilty rich white people. The money pours in. Why? Because actually, they pretty well know that you are a safe pair of hands. You are actually on our side. So you will help us make sure that the problem we've identified, we can sort it out without anybody burning down my house.
A gentleman named Scotty comes on my show regular, and he always raises point. And I put it up there. Joe, we are not slaves, sir. But I can answer that in a bit, because we're not saying we are slaves now. We're talking about the example. Am I correct?
We're using it metaphorically, yes. For our time, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
You, me, the gentleman concerned, we are not slaves. Not in the sense that slaves were, out in the cane fields and I'm here now. I'm here in England, living here because my father came here as an economic migrant and stayed. Right? My father and my mother came later, and then they brought me here. I'm not a slave in that somebody is making me stay here. I could go back to Jamaica if I want to. I could go to Africa. I could go anywhere.
And peel orange.
And P, I can peel the orange right here.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I'll show you a video later. Come on.
Once you put away the machete, you are fine, right? So, it is the case, it is the case that we are not metaphorically. If you look at the way in which it's set up, we're set up in this that those who are the leaders close to the power source, that is still an oppressive source, but the way we get out of it is by disassociating ourselves from the interests of those who say they represent us, discover our own agency, which is, of course, why I'm saying to you, of course, we're not slaves. We have agency. We have the power to self-determine. The second principle of Kwanzaa, self-determination. It is in our hands. But as long as we keep believing that our future can only be bright if white people love us, we are not going to get very far. And when I talk like that, some people think I'm anti-white. Not at all. I'm not going to just say that, I have lots of white friends, but I do. Living in this country here for the last 50 odd years, at every key moment in my life, there have been white people there. Good white people, right? Who've worked with me in my academic studies. They've been, my supervisors and people who have really helped me on the journey. I'm not anti-white at all. I'm just saying that the Western European construct that has dehumanized Black people for economic benefit largely, is still in place. And if we're going to succeed, we can't look to it for our deliverance. We have to look to ourselves, our own ingenuity, our own cooperation. When our people came and threw a partner and used that to buy cars, to marry off their children, right? That was a sense of community ministering to itself.
Yes.
And we've lost that as those with powerful voices have convinced us that actually we don't need to do those things. Because, of course, many of them are not part of the community anyway. Right? So they're convincing us that we don't have to do those things. It's coming back, though. I'm telling you, it's coming back. And if there's one benefit of the George Floyd thing, we are seeing more community action being together of Black people recognizing that actually we must work together for our own liberation.
Well, stick a pin, Uncle Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, we're doing a Jubilee special today. It's Queen Jubilee Final Legacy. Those on Instagram, you're not able to see us all. On myself for this discussion. And thank you to Sharon Thompson from Birmingham. Sharon Thompson, and those on Facebook and YouTube. Please. Uncle Joe, I'll have to, I hope you can stay on, because I said I know about it. Because people are asking questions. One person say, I'm loving this man. Thank you for the opening up the appetite of us as we're delving a bit further. We're going to keep drinking. What I mean, from yourself, sir. Scotty said again, Joe, we are not Africans.
Oh, okay. Well, I certainly am.
You even go further by saying we are not Black. I just want to...
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, I know there are different takes on this, okay? There are different takes. Literally, my skin isn't black, neither is a white person's skin white. I mean, we know that in terms of literalness. So these things are symbolisms, and of course, they are human construct, without a doubt. I would say that I am African, but I would say I have a hybridity about my identity that sees me unavoidably, whether I like it or not, rooted in my African heritage. There's no question about that. And then that African heritage went to Jamaica for me. And then when I was a teenager, my parents brought me to England. So I've lived in England longer than I've lived in Jamaica. Well, although my founding years were till I was 15 was Jamaican, I've never lived in Africa. So, but because I've never lived there doesn't mean that's not my heritage. And I think what we need to do actually is to embrace that hybridity, embrace the fact that we are African heritage, Caribbean heritage, and British heritage in terms of length of time spent here. So I'm very comfortable around that identity. You know, I put the other day, what's your ethnicity? And I said African, Caribbean, Jamaican, British. And if I put another stroke in, it would be English, because it's England I've lived, not Scotland, Wales, nor Ireland. So I take the point about being not African, but need to be careful that what you're not doing is running away from Africa because of the way in which the West has painted Africa and has depicted Africa as this poor, dark continent. And so some of us are running away from it as well. And we're running towards Europe, the bright.
Why the Chinese ensure that they're Chinese?
Absolutely.
Jews, Asians ensure.
Absolutely. We are the only people I know who are running away from our African roots and identity. Why? Well, I know the reason why. It is because the West has painted Africa as this undesirable place. That's why.
Joe, you hit the nail on the head. This is why we must dispense with the use of black as an adjective for anything and everything we do. Someone posted on LinkedIn, I'm not a black entrepreneur, I am an entrepreneur.
Well, you listen, a friend of mine, Rosemary Campbell Stevens, written a recent book about the global majority. And her point, I don't think the term works particularly well, because that global majority doesn't exist in reality as a cohesive unit. But I think our main point is driving us away from this sense of minority mindset, right? Minority mindset, and I get that. So there are different ways in which we are playing around with the identity thing. I could easily live with the idea of dispensing with the term black. But I would want to replace it with African. Right? I would want to replace it with African. I don't believe that those of us who were taken away from Africa on slave ships, and our foreparents were fortunate enough to survive the trauma and produce us. I don't think we should ever forget where the roots are. Never.
Yeah. Okay. A comment just came in. Identity is predominantly shaped by environment, nature, nurture, theory.
Sure, no problem with that. Indeed. But at the end of the day, there's a reality. There is a reality. And for me, the reality is beyond, sort of theory of identity. The reality is that the reason I was born in Jamaica is because my antecedents were taken from Africa and enslaved in Jamaica. That's why I was born there. And the reason I came to England is because Jamaica being poor, my father couldn't find work to look after us. And I mean, he told me this, told us that's why he came to England. He came to England. In fact, he planned to go back after 5 years, and he did return after 5 years, but found the money just run out quick, and he got back on a boat and came back here. So there's a reality running through the theory, and the reality is that you and I have African heritage transplanted under duress, murderous duress, into the Caribbean, for other people into the Americas and other parts of the Caribbean. And then our people came here because of economic necessity.
Uncle Joe, one of the things that we find ourselves doing, and we're going around these discussions, you have had these private discussions, and you have heard people having the same discussion. What would we say is the vaccine? Because it is a virus in a way, metaphorically. What is the vaccine that can point the way forward? Michelle said something, and Michelle said, she said, nobody in the world, now she said something about the oppressed. And I'm going to see if I can, let's look at this point. Freedom is never violently given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Now, she's talking about freedom in the sense whereby we're in slavery, in shackles. Are we, in a sense, not free to maneuver? Are we in some sort of oppressive mode whereby there's the demand to be oppressed, the demand to be free? Yes.
Yeah, there are different levels. There are different levels of freedom, right? I mean, you and I might say that we're free, but I tell you one thing: we're not free to do. We see the moon out there. We're not free to go live on it, right? I mean, so the extent to which I'm free is always going to be mediated through certain principles and realities, right? So at the moment, for example, if you're black, I read a statistic this past week that if you're black in England, you are 7.5 times more likely to be stopped and searched by the police than a white person. Right? Now, who wouldn't want to see that number come down to parity? Of course you would. So there are levels and degrees. There are things that inconvenience us that we would like to see a level enough, it will never be level, but level enough playing field, right? Opportunities around whatever, any area of life. So one can put those as wanting freedom, right? Because there are obvious restrictions that are created by the setting that we live in. But where our agency and freedom can advance us is if we see that, as some people are doing now. I came across the term the other day, Blaxit, right, which is black people, Brexit, leaving Britain, right? Blaxit. So we are, just like Britain found that it could leave the European Union, right? So listen, we are an independent country, we can leave the European Union. So too, you and I both, Silver, we are free if we wanted to leave here and go live somewhere else. As I said earlier, we can if you have the economic means and so on to do so. So, talking about freedom, it is not absolute. We're not absolutely bound, but there are limitations based on your resources, on what you can and what you can't do. But the important thing to me is to always stop looking for your salvation from somewhere else.
Okay, so let's look on the inside of ourselves now. How can we then move forward? I know the saying, we need to stop look at the Queen, stop look at Europe or whatever like that. Go back to Africa, look from Africa to give us that sense of inspiration, that hope. What is the first step? Because that's nice saying what I just said a while ago.
Yeah.
Because people are saying Africa needs to line up in certain ways,
Well, there's quite a bit of chat. I'm looking at some of them. Somebody saying, pick up the phone and talk to one of my relatives in Africa, right? Well, I would regard that as a light-hearted banter because could I pick up the phone and ring anybody, a relative in Jamaica? All my relatives are either dead or are living here in England, or most of them anyway. So that's not the test. I was still born there, and I'm still a Jamaican. So I am African because that's where my heritage come from. You said, what's the first step? To me, these things always begin in the mind, always. And I think, when some people are saying I'm not African, as I said a while ago, I think part of the reason, at least I'd want to question that, as to why are you so antipathetic towards Africa? Because I think a big part of that is because of the way in which Africa has been sold to us. Yes. And I think we need to get over that, right? You talk to a lot of young people now, they don't associate with Africa. That's because of the way Europeans have painted it. It's the same reason why the first time I did a thing for the BBC several years ago now, where I talked about the ethnic identity of Jesus, right? And I was musing on why it is that black people are very comfortable with a white image of Jesus, but are extremely uncomfortable with a black image of Jesus. Why? Well, Jesus wasn't either born in Europe to be white, nor necessarily was he born in sub-Saharan Africa to be black like me. But so why do we accept that Jesus can look white, but Jesus can't look black? It's because white has been sold to us as the ideal and beautiful, and desirable, and black is not the ideal, and undesirable, and ugly, right? And I'm afraid many of us have imbibed into our consciousness that thinking. And when we even say things like, black is beautiful, I'm proud to be black, some people are just saying it's bluster. Bluster, it's bluff and bluster. Because really, there are some people in our society, for example, take a Tiger Woods, for example. Tiger Woods, has had his challenges with women. Every one of them not black.
Yes.
At least I've never seen one. Now, if you're a black person, say living in England, and everybody you fall in love with is white, I want to ask a question about your sense of your own blackness and how you see that, how you embrace that. If you you can't fall in love with somebody that look like you.
But Uncle Joe, I'm going to have to say this, and I might get rubbed for this. I might get hit for this. But most of the black activists in the UK who are fighting for black causes, they are married to white people. Sorry, let me just drop that one right there.
Well, let me. I'm glad it's you who said that, but that is an observation that is very easily made, very easily made, and it seems on PC to explore that. But I'm sure a psychologist could have a go. Not that one person or two person, but that a whole top tier.
Yes.
A high percentage of that top tier fall into that category.
Yeah.
As to why might that be? Now I'm the first then to say, of course, people are free to love who they want. But then you look at trends, and you should be able to ask questions of those trends.
Yeah.
And because I'm also now quite old and I've seen a lot in my time, I know that many of us are
old like what? You're a young boy.
many of my fellow black folks have drunk the wine of white superiority and black inferiority. We've drunk it. And that's why I was talking about the image of Jesus, why, I went to a church just 2 weeks ago, black people, in black pastor, black everybody, Baptist church. And right up in the corner is a white Jesus, right? I was in Jamaica when my mother died 20 years ago. I saw it there. I went to the funeral parlor, as I think they call it out there. All around the funeral parlor, all the images were white European. It's as if, they're assuring you that your relative who's died, they're gone to heaven, and don't worry, black people don't run things there, right? Is white folks who run things. So I'm still not answering your question about what is the first thing that we need to do. And I think the first thing that we need to do is to stop running away from our blackness. Stop running away from our Africanness. Stop running away from ourselves. And if you can't fall in love with somebody that look like you, right? And you fall in love 10 times, 15 times, then you need to ask yourself some serious questions about self-perception and self-hate. You really do. And our community needs to handle this. Because until we do, we will not start relying on ourselves, because we won't trust ourselves. If you've those who have read Nelson Mandela's book, his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. I remember reading it when it came out years ago. And one other thing that stick out in my mind about a bit of that book is where he said when he was a fugitive on the run from the South African government, went to Ethiopia, and he got on a plane from Ethiopia, and he somehow discovered that the pilot was black. And he said for a moment his heart sank. And he suddenly realized he said something about himself, which is although he was fighting for black liberation and fighting for the black cause, and was actually on the run as a result of fighting for it, himself still had problems thinking that a black person could fly a plane. Right? So we have this black inferiorization buried deep into our psyche,
Mm.
and we see it in the top tier of leadership in this country, as you say, where, as I said, I'm probably taking liberties in assuming why that might be, except to say that it is so prevalent
Mm.
that you can't miss it, and therefore, without denuding anybody, without telling anybody that you can't do what you want to do, you do have to ask, when those people are standing up fighting your corner, I really am wondering whether they're fighting your corner because they feel they are superior,
Mm.
because they're into whiteness and think you are inferior, and there's no way you can get yourself out of the corner you are in without their help.
Wow.
Right? So it's their agency that you must now depend on. Well, I'm saying, as long as that is where your dependence is, you're never going to get out of the corner that you're in. We as a community will never get out, because the way life goes means that those people who benefit from the status quo
Yes.
will never change it. And those in power know that. They know that too. So the first thing that needs to happen is a reset of the mind. We need to fall in love with ourselves, fall in love with our thick lip, fall in love with our natty hair, even though some of us don't have none left. Fall in love with our flat nose. We need to fall in love with the melanin in our skin
Mm.
that keeps us healthy.
Yeah.
We need
But
to fall in love with
yeah.
that.
But Uncle Joe, I mean, also one of the issues, whether Michelle is right or wrong, right here, it's no white or black, European and maroon or more. We were indoctrinated in being called black. Now I just rest that there and let it land, because a lot of people within the black race say these things, and right there we are already seeing divisions.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I think, as I said earlier, and we've agreed, there are lots of theories, lots of opinions around these matters. I actually don't think, whether we stop calling ourselves black or keep calling ourselves black, I really don't think that is going to be a big issue for how we move on from here.
Yeah.
We live in a country now where, I came to England in the late 1960s, in the 70s, right? This country had a lot of antipathy towards Asian people, right? Very strong. And if I had to hazard a guess, I would say that white people in England felt a closer affinity with black people from the Caribbean than they did with Asian people,
Yeah.
right? At a guess. What has the Asian community done? Largely sent their children to medical school, sent their children to learn pretty much every profession going. And one of the reasons, somebody speculated the other day, why there are so many religious buildings which have converted their use from domestic use, industrial use, to religious use, and that you see them right on each other's doorstep, is that there are so many people of Asian extraction in planning departments that, in some ways those applications get a bly. Whereas, as many of my black pastors will have told me, if you're in London, you're trying to get a change of use through the planning permission for a black congregation, it is very, very difficult to do, right? Because we don't have nobody sitting in those places of influence. And so what the Asian community has done is what I think we need to see ourselves doing. Stop all this fussing about terminologies and we are who we are, right? Whether you call me, that you're seeing on the screen, black or African, that don't change nothing about my reality. Whether I call you African or black or call you by another term, that don't change your reality. I tell you what, if you suddenly found a way to make £1 million, right, that will change your reality. And what we need is a change of mindset about ourselves.
Yeah.
Self-love needs to become what we are about, and then collaboration with each other for the benefit of each other, as well as we build, we reach out to the wider world. We can't just live off each other, because we're small. The last census said Caribbean people were just 1% of the British population. 1%. Africans 2%. I don't know what the 21 census will say, but I don't expect it to go by a huge amount. There aren't that many of us in the country. We need to love ourselves and love each other and work with each other to build a better future for ourselves, and stop, for God's sake, stop this obsession with white approval, which I'm afraid still is what seemed to drive too many of us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I believe what's one of the powerful ending of a very successful, and should I say, Jubilee special. Yeah, a Jubilee special, not raining anything on the Queen's parade.
Great.
But Uncle Joe, what you're saying is, Jem, I'm so glad that you came on tonight. I said I was going to keep the show to an hour, but I believe it was very important that we carried on a bit to get some sort of guidance from yourself, who is an elder. Even though at the same time, I've got to still, as a younger person, teach you how to peel orange. No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. I have to play this video, which I did for Uncle Joe, because he was. Can you tell us what was it? I know it's a light moment. What was it that made me?
Well, I peeled an orange, and of course, not every time that I peel the orange, I managed to do it without breaking it. Yeah. But on an occasion a few days ago, 2-3 days ago, I peeled an orange and did not break it. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to post this on Facebook. Okay. And so I just put it around the orange so that you could see that the peel did not break. And then, of course, lots of people were chiming in about their experience, what their parents used to do, and all stuff. And then you, being you, decide to do your own video of you peeling an orange. But the funny thing was that you did not manage to peel the orange without breaking it. In fact, the first one you put up, you broke it about 5 times.
So and I cutting it.
Means you know why you better post it, because it was not speaking to the issue of not breaking the peel, right? And one chap actually came on and talked about how, yeah, but what do you do with the pith? Yeah. Pith? What pith? And of course, I'd forgotten about the pith, the soft white stuff under the orange skin between it and the actual orange. But then, I put up something on Facebook saying that you need your knife that you're using to peel the orange is too big. That's more like a machete.
Right? You're right. That first knife which I used, it was a machete one, like
that was much more like a machete. So, and a number of the people on my thread have said that when they went to school, they used to peel the orange with a pen knife.
Oh yes.
And of course, the pen knife is ideal for doing what we're trying to do here. So when I did mine, I use quite a thin, slender knife. Because if you use a thick knife, you're not going to do it, right? So a thin knife with sharp, and then you have to be I still think you peel yours far too fast.
I peel it too fast.
Yeah, you just slow down, man. Slow down.
You mean you wanted to learn the art? Is that what you want?
You need to just take your time, and enjoy the moment, and then when you get to the end of it, you rejoice. Say yes. But if you go too fast.
No, I was doing it and I was saying, Lord help me, Lord help me. And when I reached the end, my wife was there looking at me. When I said to the end, I said, yes, Lord is with me. But Uncle Joe is coming out with his competitive streak, ready to practice and come and beat me.
But the last one you did, you at least got to the end without breaking it. So I did congratulate you and say, well done.
Yeah, because my daughter, she always comes and says, Daddy Orange, But Uncle Joe, listen, on the final, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight. And I hope that person will learn. And I'll share this video as well. And I'll just keep it very tight. instead of even going on any further, because
Yeah.
the information there and different gems we have in it is so crucial. And I totally really believe what you say. And what I also said is that we should stop expecting persons who were our oppressors to be freeing us every day. Every day we are waiting them for them to free us. We must reach to the point where we are able to build ourselves based on what we have achieved over the years, because we know we can. There's
And what we can achieve going forward.
yes, our history didn't start from the transatlantic slavery. That
No,
was
sir.
the corruption process.
Indeed.
Yeah. Any last word
Absolutely.
before you go on the joke? I'll give you the last word and then I'll let you.
Well, what I would say, to those of us who are struggling with their blackness or identity, there are some very good books out there now. My good friend who write about when we were kings, I can't remember his name now, I got out of my head. And a couple of friends, Archbishop Doyer Garmer has written a couple of excellent books about the black presence in the Bible. And as my last word, some years ago, I took a group of young people, 30 years ago maybe, to listen to a Black American talk about the black presence in the Bible. He opened his comments by saying, "This talk is titled wrongly." He said the question should not be, where is the black presence in the Bible? The question should be, where is the white presence in the Bible? Because the Bible is everywhere present with either black or brown people. It was not written largely on the continent of Europe. Most of it was written in North Africa.
Yes, yes.
So
That's
love you, love me, love the beautiful dark skin full of melanin that keeps us healthy from the rays of the sun, and love the God who made us in the divine image.
yeah. And thank you. And before you go, Queen Lexi just asked, so Joe, what do you think about the global African diaspora and Six Nations? I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is?
I don't know. And Six Nation, I'm not sure what that is. But I'm very much a Pan-Africanist, not in a classic sense of Pan-Africanism, but I just think that all African people should identify with each other as of African heritage in terms of the darker skin. I believe in that kind of Pan-Africanism, and wherever we can identify with each other and collaborate, then let's do that. That's the kind of Pan-Africanism I believe. And we must introduce our children to Africa and to the Caribbean. You said it was my last word, but I turned 70 this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've already set into motion, I hope I live to see it, is that we'll be taking, my wife and I, taking our 4 grandchildren to visit Jamaica together, and so that they can see the little house in which I was born in Top Mountain, St. Catherine, Jamaica, and see where my wife comes from in Mocha in Clarendon, whereas the posh people say Mocho, Mocha, and then to show them, a bit of Jamaica, go to Kingston, spend a day there, because I want them to understand that that is part of their heritage. They're not held bound as prisoners here in England, can only complain about racism but can't do nothing about it. Yes. The world is their oyster, and I want them to know that, so they have choices that they can make as they grow up. And I'm telling them, as I meet, today was my granddad day with them, and I'm saying to them, listen guys, as you grow up, recognize that the Caribbean, Africa, massive opportunities there. Don't only look here for opportunities. I'm not telling you to move, I'm just saying, understand that the world is your oyster. Don't swallow this negativity that Europe has sown in our minds about Africa. If it's bad, make it good. It's our home.
And most importantly, if you got to get them to come to my class in learning to peel orange effectively, I'm happy for that.
The master class. Or go on my website. You'll see something of it as well. Joe Aldred on Facebook.
Yeah, I said to Michelle, if you want to follow you can go to Joe Aldred, and of course, guys, anybody can always. Joe is on.
Absolutely. Can I thank your listeners, viewers who've posted quite a lot of questions. I wish we had time to answer. Well, not to answer, but at least to address some of them. But you can follow me on social media.
Yes, yes, sir. Okay, sir. Have a good night.
God bless you.
And thank you for your wife for allowing you to stay up late.
I tell you, I'm going out now. She probably going to beat me.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Have a good
All
night.
right. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining tonight. Well, I want to thank for Uncle Joe Aldred, Bishop Joe Aldred, for coming on the show tonight. Bishop Joe Aldred is a person that I always go to. You know, sometimes you got persons that you need to go to, and I will tend to go to Bishop Joe Aldred at times to bounce things off when I've got things going through my mind and thoughts, things that what I'm thinking of posting, what I think I might not post. I like to get guidance because sometimes you got to have persons that you look up to and persons that you trust their wisdom and trust their temperament. And he's one gentleman that I trust. It's one of the few that I trust in the UK that I will go to, and he'll always be there to listen and offer me his guidance at times. So I want to thank you guys for coming on, Michelle, and those on. Hey, Mike, how are you? Those on Instagram and Facebook, you can watch the show. I'm keeping it, finishing it off now. So therefore, yes, I do know him personally. Yes, friend of the family. So you can actually go back and watch his show, share the show, because one of the key things that he has said, which I believe is very powerful, is that as Black people, we should spend time and love each other, love ourselves more and more, love ourselves more and more, and not to be spooked by the Europeans as to what blackness is, as to what Africa is, but get to know that we are great. You know, so all the best to the Queen again, of course. You know, have a good night. God bless you, and see you next time on Talk and Sip. And I had a special juice today, completely nice. I just wanted to make some blending of some fruits tonight. Okay, so peace out, all the best, and thank you very much.